And now, President of the National Press Foundation, Ann Godlasky.
Hello. Thank you all. I'm glad you're all having such a good time and having wonderful conversations already. Thank you for coming to the National Press Foundation's annual Journalism Awards dinner. As you all know, journalism is facing our greatest challenges of our lifetime. And journalists' success in exposing corruption and covering communities large and small is the oxygen of our democracy. We at the National Press Foundation are humbled to support the Fourth Estate and filled with gratitude for all of you who are here supporting our mission of making good journalists better. From China to Gaza and Maui to Washington, tonight's award winners have covered and uncovered the most pressing issues and disasters of our time. We're here to celebrate the best in journalism, so without further ado, allow me to introduce our distinguished head table. And please, I know it is tempting, especially with this group, but please hold your applause until the end. From your left, we have Dan Perkins, also known as Tom Tomorrow, winner of the Berryman Editorial Cartoonist Award. Christiane Amanpour of CNN, winner of this year's Tayshoff Award for Excellence in Broadcast Journalism. Sarah Lomax and S. Mitra Kalita, winner of the Chairman's Citation this year and founders of URL Media. And Terrence Samuel, NPF Chairman. And to my left, we have Sudeep Reddy, Politico Managing Editor and NPF's Vice Chair. Editor of the Year, Suki Dardarian of the Minnesota Star Tribune. Maria Hinojosa, winner of the W.M. Kiplinger Distinguished Contributions to Journalism Award. Knight Kiplinger, Editor Emeritus of Kiplinger Publications. And co-chairs of the NPF Advisory Committee, Meredith McPhillips of Business Roundtable and Bennett Richardson of Semaphore. Because we are celebrating a birthday this year, that's right, NPF is 50, I'd also like to recognize a very special table. Would the past presidents of NPF please stand? We have Sonny Efron, Sandy Johnson, and Bob Myers. We are so grateful for the hard work that you have put into this organization, and we're only here thanks to the legacy that you built, so thank you. And now, please enjoy your appetizers. The awards will begin shortly.
Please now direct your attention to the screens at the front of the ballroom.
I want to thank the National Press Foundation.
First of all, thank you to the National Press Foundation. This is terrific.
I also want to thank the National Press Foundation for giving me this award. You do a great job in providing educational programs for young and aspiring journalists from this country and around the world.
For 50 years, the National Press Foundation has promoted excellence in journalism through prestigious awards and training programs, providing thousands of journalists around the world with insights into the most complex topics of the day, at no cost to the reporters or their newsrooms. NPF Fellows make an impact, and 2024 was no exception. Journalists of color from across the country joined NPF's year-long Widening the Pipeline Fellowship, getting advice from Pulitzer winners and trailblazers on investigations, podcasting, and other skills to make themselves and their newsrooms stronger.
You go in there and know you're going to be just as good, if not better.
NPF's other year-long program, the Paul Miller, welcomed the 36th class, helping Washington reporters build the sources they need to thrive in the demanding D.C. press corps. Facing one of the most consequential elections in history, NPF also extended political training across the country. A fellowship on election security in Detroit featured former U.S. and current state cabinet members.
This was one of the best experiences I've had in a really long time. I got a lot of great, very specific story ideas and a lot of general knowledge.
And after completing training uncovering women in politics, NPF Fellows created public guidelines for newsrooms everywhere.
It was important to find these voices, to be able to hear what they had to say so that I could go back and better inform my colleagues and my own reporting.
And that's not all. Online, NPF held briefings on women in politics as well as public health issues, from vaccine updates to treatment-resistant depression. In Philadelphia and New Orleans, NPF partnered with RTDNA to train hundreds of broadcast journalists dedicated to improving crime coverage. In Charlotte, reporters learned about economic mobility. In Singapore, journalists from across Asia dug into international trade issues. In Montana, journalists interviewed on-the-ground experts to understand how financing, race, and health impact community development in their own cities. And back in Washington, the Carolyn C. Mattingly Award for Mental Health Reporting coincided with a new fellowship on workplace mental health. Out of these trainings, fellows produced thousands of stories and broadcasts, each one contributing to a better-informed public.
There's something really refreshing about being in a room full of journalists, just so many people who are curious and ready to learn.
None of this would be possible without the generosity of our donors. Thank you for supporting our mission of making good journalists better.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. For those who were able to see the presentation, believe it or not, all of that was accomplished was done thanks to the hardworking people taking the stage now. We have our journalism trainers, Rachel Jones and Kevin Johnson, our new development director, Pamela Roberts, assistant director of operations, Alyssa Black, multimedia lead, Sydney Clark, and last but certainly not least, our vice president and Don of the dinner, Jason Zaragoza. Each of these folks cares deeply about our mission and about every journalist who comes through our programs. To that end, I'd like to invite our Director of Journalism Initiatives, Rachel Jones, to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. I would like to start by saying thank you, because the funds that we have raised here tonight go directly to NPF fellowships and to the hardworking journalists who need our support now more than ever. We always hear from our fellows in all of our programs how inspiring NPF trainings are. But truly, they are the ones who inspire us. And so I'd like to introduce some of them to you now. Would my Widening the Pipeline Fellows in the class of 2025 please stand and keep standing? Would members of the 2025 Paul Miller Washington Reporting Fellowship class please stand and keep standing? And if you are an alumni of any NPF fellowship in any year, please stand right now. These journalists, all of you, are incredible in your work to serve the public. So if anyone in this room is hiring, this is the talent. These are the people with the ambition and the gumption that you want in your newsrooms right now. And if anybody has any tea to spill, holla at your girl. We're the ones to tell. So let's give them all a hand.
Please now welcome Sudeep Reddy, Senior Managing Editor of Politico and Vice Chair of the National Press Foundation Board of Directors.
Good evening. I am honored to present the first award of the night, the Clifford K. and James T. Berryman Award for Editorial Cartoons. Political cartoons have a long history of poking fun and provoking conversation. This year, we honor Dan Perkins, known to as many readers by his pen name, Tom Tomorrow. NPF judges noted his sharp, iconic work that holds powerful figures to account with satire. We'll have a chance to see that work in just a moment. Tom Tomorrow, congratulations.
Good evening, and thank you so much for this honor. Jules Pfeiffer once said to me that awards don't mean very much until you start winning them, and then you realize what an incredibly accurate marker of achievement they really are. So, thank you. Thank you to the Berryman family, the judges, and the National Press Foundation for continuing to celebrate political cartooning. I want to thank my clients, including Daily Kos, including Daily Coast, Tiny View Comics, Politico, who are here tonight, In These Times, and the alternative weeklies that are across the country that are still out there and still running my cartoons. I need to give a special shout out to my newsletter subscribers, because we all got to figure out new ways to survive these days, and they are a big part of the reason that I can continue to sustain this work. And on a personal note, my son Nick is out there somewhere. He's about to graduate GW, smart kid. Anybody looking to hire somebody? But when he was, 7 or 8 years old, he saw me wearing a suit and tie for some event like this, and he said, he got very puzzled, and he said, "You look like someone with a job." So Nick, I'm not sure where you are, but here I am again looking like someone with a job. I think I got them fooled. I am legitimately honored, though. I wish we were convening under better circumstances. But I hear that next year's dinner is scheduled for Guantanamo Bay. So let's enjoy this one while we can. They did ask me to show a couple of my cartoons. And you got them there. I am not doing voice impressions, just to be clear up front. Ha! They tried to put me in jail, but I got away with everything, and at last, I should say, I'm sorry. This ran the week of the inauguration a month ago, when we were all so very much younger. A lot has happened. They tried to put me in jail, but I got away with everything, and at last I'm back in the Oval Office. And Evelyn says, I'm right here with you. Yes, it's like you're surgically grafted to my side. Now I can do all the things the voters put me here to do. Again, this was a month ago. I had no idea what was going to happen. Like threatening to annex Canada and seize Greenland and the Panama Canal by force. Ah, yes, the bread and butter issues. Sir, the lesser billionaires are here to pay fealty. Bearded guy, I forgot all about you. What is it you do again? I'm Vice President of the United States, sir. Sure, if you say so. Go ahead, send them in. I don't know where the bellhop uniform came from, but it just appeared in my head. It seemed so perfect. Sir, Sir, I've just paid the First Lady $40 million for her life story, and I'm slowly strangling the life out of that stupid newspaper I own. I thought that might get a reaction. Facebook exists only to serve your needs, my liege. Okay, maybe I won't throw you both in jail just yet. Leave your latest tribute with the bellboy hair on your way out. Do I have to wear this outfit, sir? Yes. Yes, you do. All right. Time to get to work. I want to rename the Gulf of Mexico, maybe the entire planet. We could call it Trump World. A masterful troll, Mr. Co-President. I really wish you'd stop calling me that. Whatever. Next, our long national nightmare begins. So, this was a month ago when it still seemed absurd to rename the Gulf of Mexico, and here we are in a battle with the AP over what to actually name it. Political cartoonists have a tangential relationship with actual journalism. We write and draw cartoons about the news, but with some exceptions, we are not out in the field covering the news ourselves. We rely on you for that. We are the class clowns, the kids in the back of the room shooting spitballs. But journalists and cartoonists have a shared challenge right now. The media are under attack from the White House, from the oligarchs, sometimes from the oligarchs who own the media. And we've all got to find ways to meet this moment. There's an old adage that you've probably heard. If one side says it's raining outside and the other side says it's not the job of journalism to report the controversy. It's the journalist's job to look out the window and describe the storm. And for the journalists out there in the audience, I urge you so strongly to do that, to call out lies and misinformation and to never, ever comply in advance, because that's the only way we're going to get through the next few years. I could go on all night. I am full of opinions. But they asked me to keep it short, so I'm going to show one more cartoon. This one ran last week for Valentine's Day, which means that only about 5,000 things have happened since then. People always say to me, you must have so much material. And I mean, yeah, like if you ask the waiter for a glass of water and he brings out a fire hose and blasts you in the face, I mean, you know, I'd be okay with a little less material, I gotta be honest. So this is the Valentine's Day cartoon. There we go. Valentine's Day cards for 2025. Valentine, are you America's vital financial, regulatory, and data infrastructure? Because I intend to seize unconstitutional control of your heart. There's Elon ripping out the wiring of government. Darling, my feelings for you are highly contagious. Do your own research and be my anti-vax Valentine. I'm sorry, he's our new, I can't even believe it. I just can't believe it. He's the head of HHS. And for a very timely Valentine, dearest Valentine, I'd never put you on an enemies list unless I suspected you of disloyalty to President Donald J. Trump. Sweetheart, my love for you is as fresh and pure as a government website scrubbed of any reference to climate change, public health, or DEI. I have just signed an executive order requiring you to be my Valentine. I am the president now, and you have to do what I say. That is just how things work. So, thank you again. I think I get some sort of trophy or something, and it's really going to brighten up my cell block at the re-education camp. Maybe I'll see you there. Thank you. Good night.
Presenting the Innovative Storytelling Award, Dean of the Philip Merrill College of Journalism at the University of Maryland, and NPF board member, Rafael Lorente.
Digital journalism has reinvented the way stories are reported. This year, we honor the New York Times staff for its hour-by-hour reconstruction of the deadly Lahaina fire on Maui. Our judging team was struck by the breadth of technology, making sense of hundreds of videos, interviews, weather models, 911 calls, traffic data, and evacuation alerts to explain in acute detail how the tragedy unfolded. Speaking on behalf of the reporting team is Malika Khurana.
I'm glad Tom Tomorrow got all the laughs because I don't know how to write a joke. Sorry. It's such an honor to accept this award on behalf of our amazing team at the Times. The four of us are really just a small slice of all the people who touched this project. We're really just the ones who are free tonight. So this is an award for innovative storytelling, and while we did try some new things, using 3D map tiles layered with video, personal accounts, and data, at its core, this project was about storytelling. It wouldn't have been possible without the utility and weather experts, the traffic data companies who helped us piece together what happened, and most critically, the survivors and community members in Lahaina who were willing to share their experiences and footage. It's what made this story not just innovative, but also deeply human. It's such a privilege to be trusted with that information, and really to be trusted to tell their story. Thank you again to the National Press Foundation, and for everyone who made this project what it is.
And now, please welcome NPF board member and Wall Street Journal national security correspondent, Nancy Youssef.
News coverage is constantly evolving, and the National Press Foundation Awards have grown to recognize the best reporting in key topics. It's my privilege to announce the launch of a new award that the Chamber, funded by the U.S. Chamber Award for Excellence in Local Business Reporting. Beginning next year, this award, sponsored by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, will recognize outstanding coverage of local business across America with a $10,000 prize. And this year also marks the inaugural Wounded Warrior Project Award for Excellence in Coverage of Veterans. This award, one to a large newsroom and one to a small or regional outlet, honors work that elevates understanding of the needs, struggles, and triumphs of this country's 18 million veterans. John Dietrich of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel won the large newsroom category for his coverage of firearm suicides, particularly among veterans. Congratulations, John, for bringing nuance to this important issue.
Good evening. It is an honor and a blessing to receive this award. I'd like to thank the National Press Foundation and the Wounded Warrior Project. We have the best table over here, by the way. And I'd also like to acknowledge my editors, Greg Borowski and Daphne Chen, and other leaders from Gannett who are here tonight. Without their support, this kind of long, time-committed work with impact does not happen. I also wanted to thank and acknowledge my amazing wife, Raquel Rutledge, who is here tonight. We didn't work that out. That was good. That was good. Very good. You got me. Good. I'd also like to thank the veterans and other gun owners who trusted me to write about the most desperate moments of their lives and the hope that bloomed afterward. There was Chuck Lovelace. He's an Army veteran and a gun store owner. He struggled with mental health himself since he came home from Afghanistan. A couple of his customers died by suicide, and he founded the Gun Shop Project in Wisconsin, a grassroots effort to store firearms for gun owners in crisis. And there's Mike Eschinger. He's a former soldier and police officer who faces his own trauma after a couple tours in Iraq. Mike takes emergency phone calls literally 24/7 from veterans in crisis. And finally, Dan Marcon, Navy veteran, also a gun store owner, who came close to ending his own life, and he credits his dog with saving his life, and Dan's been helping veterans since then. When it comes to guns, there's much that divides us Americans. I looked for what brings us together. I found reason for hope in a world that badly needs it. Thank you so much for this award.
We also recognize Longlead for the multimedia feature Home of the Brave, which tells the story of veterans evicted from land designated to house disabled veterans and their fight for a place to call home. Accepting on behalf of Longlead is John Patrick Pullen.
On behalf of our team at Longlead, and we are a small group, you saw a lot of people up there, we work with a lot of independent journalists. We want to thank the National Press Foundation and the Wounded Warrior Project. 1 month before Abraham Lincoln's assassination and the end of the Civil War, the president signed legislation establishing a national home for disabled volunteer soldiers. And these were all over the US. In 1887, Congress mandated that they make one west of the Rockies. And in 1888, the land that now makes up the West LA VA was donated specifically to the government to house veterans. By 1958, 5,000 veterans lived on that property. Our government did that. Our Congress did that. In 1972, and that was over 50 years ago, the San Fernando earthquake just decimated California, and the VA evicted those veterans from that land. They moved them all over the country, but now there's 4,000 unhoused veterans in Los Angeles. 4,000. Veteran homelessness is an issue that almost everyone, regardless of your political views, agrees should be fixed. Vets shouldn't be homeless. Six 6% of Americans are veterans. And if you want some perspective, that is basically the size of the Asian American population in the US. So it's not a stretch to say that when we solve veterans' problems, we solve Americans' problems. A week after we put this out, Home of the Brave, a federal judge ruled that the VA had discriminated against LA's unhoused vets. The first sentence of his ruling was the first line of our story. LA is the unhoused veteran capital of America. How bonkers is that to say in a sentence? Why do we have a capital of America for unhoused veterans? The judge ordered the VA to build hundreds, close to 2,000 temporary housing units, and to immediately get these vets off the street. And the VA defied that order. You guys know about the wildfires, right? If they had done the job, none of the vets would have had been evacuated into downtown Los Angeles. Everyone would have been safe. The solution, again, is Congress. So I'm here tonight, and I want to say, tell your representatives about Home of the Brave, homeofthebrave.longlead.com, and the thousands of unhoused veterans that still live on the streets of Los Angeles. They should be housed at the West LA VA campus. Tell them to draft and pass laws that will allow the VA to build housing. Thank you.
Presenting the Fetty Award, 2014 Fetty Award winner and Pulitzer finalist, Tom Frank.
Thank you. The Fetty Reporting Award recognizes outstanding reporting about the impact of federal laws and regulations on local communities. Federal laws, how quaint. This year's winner is Cox Media Group and KFF Health News for their year-long investigation, Social Security Secret, that found the agency had been overpaying billions of dollars to people, many of them disabled, and then reclaiming the money even when the government admitted their own mistake. Accepting the award is Jody Fleischer.
Good evening. We're incredibly honored to accept this award on behalf of the investigative teams at Cox Media Group's 8 local television stations and KFF Health News. When we began this project, all we really knew was that the Social Security Administration was clawing back a lot of money, billions of dollars each year from people in our local communities who could not afford it. We set out to determine how many people. We found it impossible to believe the government agency that assigns a unique identifying number to every American couldn't or wouldn't tell us how many people this was happening to. What we could do was show our viewers and our readers the catastrophic impact the clawbacks were having on so many lives. We dedicate this award to the dozens of families who feared public embarrassment or agency retaliation, but still invited us into their living rooms and their lives. Families showed us their eviction notices, talked about needing help to buy groceries. One woman we featured was living in her car. Our team sent these stories to members of Congress who represent our local communities. The response was swift. Letters to the agency, an internal review, a congressional hearing. We ultimately showed that 2 million Americans each year were getting hit with overpayment notices. The Social Security Administration later acknowledged it had not started tracking that until well into our reporting. The agency enacted a series of policy reforms to limit how much money it would withhold from beneficiaries' checks, and recentered its focus on the people it serves rather than the dollars it was trying to collect, at least for now. Social Security's Secret chronicles our entire year of reporting and brought this important topic to a primetime audience in 8 cities. And it's still streaming if you have a spare 48 minutes. We'd like to thank the National Press Foundation for this honor and for having an award that celebrates the power of local reporting to affect change at the national level. At a time when journalism's headwinds might seem insurmountable, our collaboration truly was a perfect pairing and proved that newsrooms are more powerful when we work together. Thank you.
And now, presenting the Saul Tashoff Award for Excellence in Broadcast Journalism, CNN's Wolf Blitzer.
And the recipient of this award back in 2013. He forgot to mention that. It is truly my pleasure to join all of you tonight in honoring CNN's chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour. Give her a big round of applause. She's a very special journalist and a very special person. I have known her and worked very closely with her for several decades, and she is truly, truly amazing. And as so many of you know, Christiane has often risked her life to go to war zones and report the news. She has always done so with accuracy and honesty. That was certainly true when she reported on Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait back in 1990 and the first Gulf War that followed. Together with our other war correspondents, including Bernard Shaw, John Holloman, and Peter Arnett, Christiane helped put CNN on the world map. People all over the world were watching our special breaking news coverage, and she was truly brilliant, launching her extraordinary career as a war correspondent. Christiane soon followed up with her very courageous coverage of the Bosnian War, and it didn't stop there. Indeed, to this very day, we can always count on Christiane to let the world know what's going on. She is not afraid to tell the truth, even when it's painful, and we are all so grateful to her. Christiane is in a very special class of journalists who are dedicated to telling the world what's really going on, and she does. She has received over the years numerous awards, and they are all so well deserved. And this is yet another very special honor. On behalf of all of us, congratulations, Christiane, and thank you for all you've done and are still doing to keep the world informed. Let's hope it continues for many years to come. Christiane Amanpour.
Thank you so much, Mr. 2013, for coming here and being so gracious. Thank you to the NPF for this. I'm really very honored and delighted. Thank you to my fabulous friends, colleagues at CNN. I do actually owe it all to CNN, and I do feel that I grew up with CNN, which in June will be 45 years old, and has changed the world, in my opinion, for the better. So let's start with what's happening now. Listen, I started this new year thinking that I'm going to have a great reset. I went for a lovely sunny holiday. I came back. I found some words of advice from friends on how to sort of comport yourself when all around you is going to hell. So one of these friends sent me her advice called the glimmer theory. I don't know whether it's an actual theory, but the idea is to recognize and focus on those moments in your day that make you feel joy, happiness, peace, gratitude. Then there was another friend who sent me a lovely, kind message, and I commented to her on it. And she said that her New Year's resolution is to say nice things whenever she thinks of nice things. So I was really grateful. I felt wonderful. I tried. I really, really tried. But these last few weeks have been trying. They've been testing. Suddenly I find myself suited and booted again in my warrior queen armor, as a journalist, as a person, as a member of a community that I actually want to belong to. The breakneck speed at which the current executive is slashing and burning at home and abroad, trying to create a truly new world order, is unprecedented. Over here, I've heard it said that you are teetering on the verge of a constitutional crisis as the executive tests the absolute limits of his power. It's alarming to watch how speedily and with little apparent effort democratic and cultural institutions are being discarded, including by an unelected oligarch class. Who can tell whether any, all, or none of this new foreign policy is posturing? We'll see, but I've returned from the front lines to give you a report. If only you had been in Munich last weekend to hear an American vice president lecturing and scolding his stalwart allies, while at the same time America, in the words of a former British prime minister, officially cuddles with Vladimir Putin. The German defense minister in the audience for this address actually heckled Vance. He heckled the interference on behalf of the extreme far right in Germany, who espoused some Nazi ideas. He called that unacceptable. America this week, officially, at least from the president's mouth, has unilaterally changed the truth, berating Ukraine and President Zelensky for starting the war and calling him the dictator. I can only hope that this will calm down. And note that the US intelligence sees, quote, zero evidence that Putin is ready to negotiate on anything other than his own maximalist goals. This senior European leader, the Prime Minister of Britain, former Prime Minister, warns of an unprecedented world realigning moment where democracy and our whole way of life is under threat. He, Sir John Major, who right after Munich said, I really go on the media, but sometimes there are things that need to be said that can't be said by current governments, but perhaps need to be said anyway. He went on, if America does not stand by its allies in the way it has for the past 80 years, we are leading and heading towards an extremely dangerous world. And he said, it's hard to understand why. This is what is really confusing and befuddling certainly your allies and potentially delighting your adversaries. Major quoted President George H.W. Bush, with whom he helped fight the first Gulf War that Wolf alluded to there. He said, for every action there is a reaction. In other words, if America steps back, somebody will step forward and replace them. In this case, he said, he warned that if Putin is allowed to win and win that territory that he illegally invaded Ukraine for, and he warned that China would be watching, potentially with what they might do to Taiwan. And he said that Putin and Xi, quote, are now dancing with joy. This is not something that we should be taking any comfort in, because when America's adversaries are dancing with joy, it means they want to see an American leader who could make America weaker. This is where we are right now. My story, look, I was brought up and lived much of my life in monarchies, revolutions, and authoritarian environments. As a child and as a young adult growing up in Iran, and later as a journalist covering these situations, I always got to watch the king cause otherwise smart, intelligent, educated, strong, rich, moral people laugh at even his silliest jokes, bend to his bullying, and exhaust all manner of obsequiousness before realizing too late that they'd lost their soul and that the king couldn't care less anyway. He hadn't lost any of his contempt for any of them. I've reported this as illiberalism creeps from the far eastern edges of Europe to the very center, and we're witnessing it now land as far west as here. The press, and of course Edward R. Murrow, and I want to read his fantastic quote here. He warned in a very, very crucial time when he stood up against a very ugly manifestation, McCarthyism. He talked about television and the birth of television. He said, this instrument can teach, it can illuminate, yes, and it can even inspire. But it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it to those ends. Otherwise, it's nothing but wires and lights in a box. There is a great and perhaps decisive battle to be fought against ignorance, intolerance, and indifference. And that's where we come in. It is time, of course, my friends, we have to remain up to this task. We can't be exhausted, we can't shrug, we can't allow ourselves to be overwhelmed. I note a recent article in the New York Times about previous anti-press presidents. After President Nixon's re-election in 1972, and amid the Washington Post's remarkable investigative reporting on Watergate, they challenged TV licenses owned by the Washington Post company, as well as a whole load of other pressure. The article quotes the Washington Post publisher, Katharine Graham, from her memoir, when she said, the administration's power and anger were at their greatest after the landslide election, and we were at our weakest. We were scared. I understand that. It is scary. It is scary talking truth to power. It's scary going to war zones to report, for instance. But I agree now with the CPJ, who says that we must defend ourselves against, for instance, retaliatory lawsuits, punitive action by the FCC, targeted attacks against individual journalists and news organizations. I may be Pollyanna, but from my experience in war zones, where I believe teams matter and communities need to stick together in order to survive, I believe an attack on one should be treated as an attack on all. It's unacceptable for AP to be banned from the White House, or any of us. Any news organizations to be kicked out of legacy positions and institutions where they're able to cover and hold power accountable. But luckily, I read that many of our news organizations, including those sympathetic to the current administration and whom the current administration favors, have written to the White House to make the case for AP. And I do hope that that is fixed and AP can go back. I wonder also whether leaders from all our organizations can band together and devise a joint legal or other kind of defense strategy for all of us. This is the only nation where the press has a constitutional right. It's the law, and if we don't uphold or defend it, who will? And I hate to bring up the usual suspects, and I know it's an eye roll and a turn off, but the first acts of Nazism, of Mussolini's fascism, and many dictatorships, autocracies, and illiberal democracies, the first acts begin with the systematic destruction of the free and the independent press, and the deliberate intimidating and silencing of the uncomfortable truth. And in case you want a roadmap for that, I don't point you to China or to Russia, etc., but to Orban's Hungary and to all of those, even in Europe, who are eating at the edges of the free press that is a vital part of any thriving democracy. Also, as we know, the USAID money that is given for humanitarian, of course, it's also given to many of these countries to help a free press in their countries when all they have is state-controlled press. And I think that certainly many of these countries will be celebrating because it will have significant repercussions denying those funds for them for a free press globally. And again, I really thank CNN and I thank Ted Turner for creating CNN and particularly for developing CNN International as a way to give people around the world, and that was in 1985 when he took CNN International, to give people in state-run autocracies especially an alternative that's truthful, that really can get at the facts and tell them when all they had was their state-run media organizations, and you know how that goes. So I want to thank you all, and I just want to end with the title of this one book. It's written about something completely different, but I want to just hold this up and show it to you. It says, "One day, everyone will always have been against this. The full title, One Day When It's Safe, When There's No Personal Downside to Calling a Thing What It Is, When It's Too Late to Hold Anyone Accountable, everyone will always have been against this. Thank you all so much.
And I'll leave you with these words, Christiane. I'm Wolf Blitzer, and you're in the Situation Room.
Because it's all about you, Wolf, and I love you.
Because whatever room I'm in, there's a situation, and there's a great situation with Christiane going on right now.
Thank you so much.
And now, presenting the Heinrich Foundation Award for Distinguished Reporting on Trade is four-time Pulitzer winner, 2020 Heinrich Award winner, and Paul Miller Class of '98 alum, Carol Lenig of the Washington Post.
I just want to say two things. In the first Wolf Blitzer, class of '98, and the other thing I want to say is in the original program, I was not supposed to follow Christiane, and I'm going to bring that up later. That's how things go. But, you know, I think she underscored beautifully one of the themes of the birthday of the National Press Foundation, and that is making good journalists even better. And she's done that for me and many other people here tonight. So thank you, Christiane. Good night, wherever you are in your limo. All right. In a series of briefings last year, FBI Director Chris Wray sounded a worrisome alarm. The government of China was on a quote-unquote broad and unrelenting mission to wound America through every means at its disposal, stealing America's economic strength, piercing its national security, even disrupting our elevators, our water systems, our heating. Fortunately, 3 reporters at the Wall Street Journal were already on the case to help explain several pieces of that campaign to their readers and to the world. Lisa Lin, leading that charge, was already an expert in China's military-grade surveillance of its civilians, and she discovered the Chinese leader Xi Jinping and his directive to delete American technology from its country. She, along with Raphael Huang and Stu Wu, documented how Huawei, the Chinese telecom firm that the US sought to weaken and block from spying on Americans, has only gotten stronger in the last several years, thanks to the help of the Chinese government. Raphael revealed how a massive underground network smuggles scores of advanced AI chips into China on a weekly basis, circumventing and violating US export controls that were meant to prevent China from using these as a military tool against us and their enemies. Judges from the National Press Foundation found the reporters' doggedness and bravery in the face of China's crackdown on journalism, quote unquote, especially impressive, and rightly so. There's a favorite phrase among journalists: we don't do this for the prizes, but as a past Heinrich Award winner, I would just say I know the value of having our peers here in the room and the National Press Foundation buoy our work, and especially when it's under attack from all corners. It's my great privilege to present this year's Heinrich Award to Wall Street Journal reporters Lisa Lin, Raphael Huang, and Stu Wu.
Thank you so much. It's very nerve-wracking to be standing here after Christiane took the stage. I have to echo what Carol said, because I think when I was first starting out as an international foreign correspondent in China 14 years ago, she was my idol, and she still remains a rock star for a lot of people who are out there, for all these foreign correspondents out there, particularly female. So back to the award, I just want to say thank you to the National Press Foundation and the Heinrich Foundation for this award and supporting this very important topic. Raphael, Huang, and Stu Wu, my talented colleagues, couldn't be here tonight, but we are really grateful that our hard work of last year, which unveiled basically the unintended consequences of the US move to cut China off from American technology. We're really, really grateful and thrilled that our hard work is recognized. Firstly, I kind of want to say thank you to everyone who made our series possible, and that includes our colleague Yoko Kubota, who contributed reporting to the series, and our indispensable editors, Neil Weston, Patrick Bada, and Tim Martin, who are all in Asia at this point. The other thing I wanted to do was just to call out the journal's China Bureau, and actually all the reporters for foreign news agencies and magazines out there still covering the China beat now, mainly because I want to call them out because China is increasingly becoming a black box through various data laws and national intelligence laws passed over the last few years. It's been very, very hard and very challenging for us to get accurate information about the country. And if you couple that with the expulsion of foreign journalists in 2020 and the inability to get new visas for many of us to go in, you are finding a place that a lot of the coverage of China now is really being written from outside of China, and this is our 5th year doing it. So whenever you read a China story in the paper, just remember that a lot of us, for us, it's been very challenging covering the China from outside of China, but we remain committed to doing it. And just for that, I just want to give a shout out to all the journalists who cover China at this point. So thank you again for the National Press Foundation and also the Heinrich Foundation for the award. Thank you.
Lisa was a fellow at our Singapore fellowship, so I had to give her a little hug before I let her go. Please, everyone, enjoy your dinner. We will resume the awards in 25 minutes. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. And now, NPF Advisory Committee co-chairs Bennett Richardson of Semaphore and Meredith McPhillips of Business Roundtable.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here and choosing to spend your evening with us. It's inspiring to see the room literally packed wall to wall with so many people here to support NPF's amazing work of making good journalists better through all of its trainings and fellowships. And we wouldn't have been able to bring you all here tonight without the support of a great group of people who've been dedicating and volunteering their time to help bring tonight's dinner to life. So I'd like to ask our fellow members of the advisory committee to please stand so we can say a quick thank you to them. So thank you everybody so much.
As Bennett said, we're so grateful to the advisory committee and hope that many leaders in this room will become involved in NPF. We welcome your interest and hope to work with you in the future. Tonight we mark 50 years of the National Press Foundation, and we must say it's aged well. And it's apropos at this milestone that I get to introduce Bill Walsh, an NPF board member, Paul Miller alumnus, and VP at AARP, who will bestow the AARP Award for Excellence in Journalism and Aging. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see we missed a big opportunity here. I wasn't thinking that NPF was turning 50. If I had remembered, I would have brought one of those giant AARP cards and given it to you and welcomed you to the fold. I am pleased to present the NPF AARP Awards for Excellence in Journalism on Aging. We created these awards with the National Press Foundation to recognize outstanding contributions to the public's understanding of one of the major societal, economic, and demographic trends of our time, the increase in human longevity. This year's large media outlet winner investigated nearly 100 deaths in assisted living facilities nationwide. The series, Memory, Inc., exposed neglect in these largely unregulated facilities that allowed more than 2,000 people to wander off on their own. It is a chilling account that highlights major gaps in our elder care system. Accepting for the Washington Post team is Chris Rowland. Chris?
Good evening. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the National Press Foundation and AARP for this honor and for recognizing the importance of the Post's investigation. This was a large team effort, as you can see, and reflected the commitment of the Post and its editors to supporting ambitious journalism, in this case, by the Business Desk's Corporate Accountability Team. This type of work consumes considerable resources, but is so vital because it reveals the practices of large corporate interests are not often aligned with the best interests of consumers. Or in the case of this series, the elderly people who are too frail to look out for themselves, as well as their families who entrusted these companies and paid them tens of thousands of dollars to keep their loved ones safe. We found that poor investment in staff and training by the assisted living and memory care industry, amid little to nearly zero regulation, is the direct cause of preventable deaths of its residents, often in the freezing cold or boiling heat outside the facilities. This team effort was led by multiple editors, including Corporate Accountability, Evelyn LaRubia, and a team of reporters that's right behind me here that I was honored to work with, including Peter Wawiski, Douglas McMillan, Todd Frankel, Yagana Torbati, Julie Zosmer-Wheel, and Stephen Rich. They are amazing colleagues, and I'm very honored to have worked with them. Please say thank you. Our reporting shows how important it is for elder care executives, as well as federal and local politicians, to recognize that dementia is a complex medical and behavioral condition that demands attentive care for individual patients, care that they often are failing to receive right now under the current system. Thank you.
Congratulations to the Post. And the National Press Foundation AARP Award for Small Regional Outlet goes to KGTV, ABC 10 News in San Diego. They provided an unvarnished portrait of families struggling to care for loved ones with dementia in their series, The Cost of Care. One woman caring for her mom, one of the 7 million Americans with dementia, summed it up this way: I don't know if I'd say the system is broken, because broken sort of assumes at some point it was built and that it fell down. It was never developed. We've never developed a system to deal with the disease like dementia. Accepting for KGTV is Adam Rakusin. Adam?
Thank you so much. Most people know someone or have a family member who's experienced Alzheimer's or dementia. Some of our own family members lost their lives to the disease. Ray's grandfather, Adam's grandmother, and my mom. But it's not just the people experiencing the disease. It's to all the people who care for them. Millions across the country, and that number continues to grow. This series of stories goes out to them. To the people who let us into their homes and experience what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. It took us almost a year for someone to feel comfortable enough to open their door and agree to allow us to spend the day with them. Efforts have been made at the federal level to try to help, but most experts will tell you that's only a Band-Aid. If there isn't immediate action on savings or long-term care insurance in Congress, a financial fallout is on the way. I want to thank Adam and Ray, who are up here with me. Thank you to the National Press Foundation and the AARP for giving us the opportunity, and to Scripps News Group for backing this storytelling effort. Local news can and does do good work that shines a light on places many people don't like to look. My parents were bankers, my brother a banker, my uncle a banker. They never understood why or how I chose this profession. I know. I think I can speak for the three of us up here when I say we chose it because we wanted to make a difference in our community. Thank you.
Presenting the Everett McKinley Dirksen Award for Distinguished Reporting of Congress is Paul Miller alumnus, multiple Pulitzer winner, and 2017 Dirksen winner, James Grimaldi.
Thank you. The following presentation comports with the Associated Press style book. Until recently, that was not a statement that was controversial. I think there's something that we can all agree on in this crowd that would probably not be controversial at all. Let's tell the government to keep its hands off the AP style book. The Everett McKinley Dirksen Award honors the best investigative and most illuminating coverage of Congress. This is the 45th time the Dirksen Award has been presented. Past honorees are a who's who of Washington journalism. Cokie Roberts, Jonathan Karl, Candy Crowley, Michael Kranish, Joan Biskubic, Julie Davis. But before we get to tonight's winner, I want to ask everyone to remember the award given 21 years ago to Paul Kane, then of Roll Call. Last week, Paul offered credit for his 2004 prize to Tim Curran, then the editor of Roll Call and mentor to many Washington journalists. It was Roll Call's first Dirksen Award, and Paul said that Tim, quote, loved being a reflection in the glow of others' success. A former Washington Post Enterprise editor, Tim died on February 9th at the age of 57. Let's take a brief moment of silence to remember Tim, his work, and his contributions to Washington journalism. Thank you. Tonight's winner, Benjamin Guggenheim, whose investigation for Politico exposed a lobbying campaign that delivered a tax windfall to wealthy Americans in the form of legislation that will cost taxpayers up to $660 billion. And as Dirksen would say, you're talking about $1 billion here and $1 billion there, you're talking about real money. His year-long investigation uncovered a sophisticated lobbying operation where industry groups
drafted legislation, held fundraisers at luxury resorts, and channeled millions of dollars in campaign contributions to key lawmakers behind a sweetheart deal for the rich. Judges said of Guggenheim's work, it not only showed the power of the industry's influence, but explained its impact, its relevance, and its reach. It was groundbreaking work, Benjamin, and congratulations on this year's Dirksen Award.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. A story I like to tell from one of my first days as a Capitol Hill reporter working for a wonderful publication called Tax Notes, and I think I see Katie Stanton somewhere over there, rock star Capitol Hill reporter for Tax Notes, is interacting with a certain senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. I introduced myself as Benjamin Guggenheim from Tax Notes, and he went, "Oh my God, Tax Notes! Everyone in Vermont reads Tax Notes." And being a naive reporter, this was one of the first days I had on Capitol Hill. I started thinking, holy smokes, there must be tons of accounting or law firms in Burlington or something with need of tax expertise that I don't know about. But Bernie Sanders put his arm over me and he said, "I'm pulling your leg, never heard of it. What's your question?" I would have never thought 3 years ago when I started reporting on Capitol Hill, getting hoodwinked by the likes of Bernie Sanders, that I would be here in such incredible company. I've truly learned so much. In particular, deep investigative reporting on Congress, and I was reminded what Christiane Amanpour said earlier tonight, can be a very harrowing and lonely experience. In my experience with this story, I had very powerful people, lobbyists, PR professionals, lawmakers, and their staff using every ounce of the very significant resources available to them to sow doubt in my story. It takes courage in those moments to have confidence in your reporting. And it's critical to have people and mentors that have your back and truly believe in you. I couldn't have written this story in particular without the help of one person, and that's Peter Canellos, who has been an extraordinary mentor and has taught me a great deal about both journalism and life. When I first approached Peter about doing an ambitious story on Congress's 2.5-decade-long retirement reform project, Peter didn't bat an eye and was all in for helping me tackle the ambitious story. And he really believed in me and my abilities before I believed in them and myself, which was very special, a very special gift. And I think he's touched other young journalists in the newsroom in a similar way. So thank you, Peter. Thank you so much to Sudeep Reddy, Clea Benson, and my other colleagues at Politico, our esteemed editor-in-chief, John Harris, for making this work possible. I'd also like to acknowledge incredible scholars, Michael Duran of University of Virginia, Daniel Hemmel, and Alicia Munell, who have done extraordinary academic work on disparities in retirement security in this country. And I think I'll take the advice of our esteemed editor-in-chief, John Harris, and invest the financial award in the financial markets, and perhaps even put it in my IRA. Thank you so much to the National Press Foundation for this incredible honor. Thank you.
Please now welcome NPF Chairman of the Board, Terrence Samuel.
There's some interesting stuff going on up here with this, with these notes. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I was struck earlier by Christian's suggestion that essentially the White House Correspondents Association should adopt an Article 5 notion that an attack on one is an attack on all of us. That feels like something we could all agree to. And I know the narrative is that we are in really tough times, under attack, and essentially not having a good time. I want to present to you this evening as a counter-argument to all of that. Because I will also remind you that tonight you people clapped for the AP style book. In 1996, people who had my jobs at the National Press Foundation established the Chairman's Citation to recognize individuals whose accomplishments were outside the traditional categories of journalistic excellence, but whose work had been having or is or was having a profound effect on our industry. And I think tonight we have a couple of people who meet that bill spectacularly. And so I would say one of the highlights of my first year as chairman is the opportunity tonight to recognize the vision and passion of S. Mitra Kalita and Sarah Lomax, co-founders of URL Media. Sarah and Mitra challenged the status quo, created an innovative organization designed to increase coverage by, of, and for marginalized communities. They created a network of brown and black news organizations that spectacularly changed the face of how we see these communities. URL Media uplifts, respect, and love, if you're wondering, was born at the height of the 2020 racial justice protests. It addresses the underrepresentation and the misrepresentation of communities of color in mainstream media. And one of the big problems that they faced at the outset was underfunding of media organizations that serve these communities. That is a fight that continues, and a fight that they, I think, are leading us to help win. Mitra, Sarah, thank you for your vision, your action, and your devotion to making the media world a better place. It is my privilege and my honor to award you the National Press Foundation's Chairman's Citation.
We're going to do it now?
We're doing it now. We're doing it live.
Put you in the middle.
Thank you, Terrence. We stand before you, one of us the daughter of immigrants, the other the descendants of enslaved Africans. And we confess it's hard to stand here and be honored for elevating traditionally marginalized voices when there are unprecedented efforts to silence those voices yet again. As we've heard tonight, the press is under attack, Our people are under attack. Our very existence is under attack. We launched URL Media in January of 2021, right after President Biden's inauguration. We stepped onto the scene with this pronouncement: we don't want the next 4 years to be like the last 400. And here we are 4 years later, engulfed in chaos, repression, and regression, under a new administration that has vowed to take us back to a time when America was only great for wealthy white men. We cannot and will not be erased. We believe that in this moment, we need more diversity of thought, experience, and opinion, not less. And you will hear the word diversity from us over and over and over again. You heard from Terry what URL stands for: uplift, respect, and love. And this is what we do, which is a bit of a revolution in the press. We uplift the voices of powerful local and national media outlets that serve communities that have been historically and systemically underestimated, under-resourced, and in many cases rendered invisible. URL Media is a network of 35 and growing Black and brown media outlets who give a voice to these communities. We also empower these outlets to build greater business sustainability by sharing content and sharing additional revenue streams. We'd like to thank the National Press Foundation and hope the spirit that resulted in this award remains intact and that our industry continues to see the value of diversity. If you ask people in countries which ended up losing press freedoms, 2 regrets emerge. One is the need to support journalism outlets financially. The other is the lack of solidarity that marked governments that headed towards autocratic leadership. Solidarity is a bedrock of our network. In honoring us tonight, you are honoring dozens of trusted messengers in service of their communities. We commit our journalism via newspaper, WhatsApp, podcast, radio station, live stream, QR codes, flyers, in English, Spanish, Bengali, and many other languages. It is worth noting that the 35 media outlets we represent tonight, and I'd like to name them: Documented, Palabra, Scalawag, TBN 24, that's the Bangladeshi network, The Haitian Times, Scroll, Sahan Journal, Native News Online, Black Voice News, Outlier Media, Push Black, The Oklahoma Eagle, Immigrantly Media, La Noticia, Pulso, and my outlet, Epicenter NYC. Sarah's gonna read you the rest.
Watch the Yard, Black Girl Times, Latina to Latina, Trenton Journal, Luz Media, Assam News, Elevate Dayton, Capital B, India Currents, The Electorate, El Tecolote, Tan TV Studios, Baltimore Beat, Parlay Media, Kansas City Defender, and my outlet, Word Radio. So I'm gonna close us out by saying that diversity is not value added and is not only good for business. It is the very fabric of this nation. It is fundamental to the practice of journalism and the foundation of democracy, and it's essential to our well-being and success collectively and globally. We cannot scrub our websites or erase keywords. This is who we are. We represent communities of color fearlessly and unapologetically. Together, we are trusted messengers and represent culturally relevant, culturally specific community media that empower and inform our people every day. We are determined to continue the proud tradition of the Black press, which was started with Freedom's Journal in 1827 by Samuel Cornish and John B. Russfirm. These were their words: "We wish to plead our own cause, Too long have others spoken for us. We believe that we are the messengers best positioned to meet this moment. So I want to respectfully borrow Dr. King's sentiment from his Selma speech for the moment in the times that we are in. Democracy dies when we refuse to stand up for justice. Press dies when we refuse to take a stand for that which is true. And freedom dies when we refuse to stand up for that which is right. So we're going to stand amid disinformation and misinformation, amid fear, amid hate, and be the messengers our communities need now more than ever. We're grateful for this award as affirmation of what we are doing right, and we hope your support remains unwavering in the days to come. Thank you so much for this honor.
Please now welcome Knight Kiplinger, Editor Emeritus of Kiplinger Publications.
Good evening. Maria Hinojosa grew up in Chicago in the 1960s and the 1970s in a family that immigrated to the United States from Mexico when her father, a brilliant medical researcher on the causes of deafness, was recruited to the University of Chicago. Her mother was at home with their 4 children at first, but later became a social worker and activist against domestic violence. Her family were avid consumers of broadcast news, radio and television on their local channels. Together, the family watched The Today Show, 60 Minutes, and the evening network news shows that all of America watched in that pre-cable era, with star anchors like Cronkite, Huntley and Brinkley, Frank Reynolds. As Maria recalls today, there were never any journalists who looked like me. There were never any stories about people who even remotely looked like our family. But she didn't decide as a little girl or even a teenager to become a journalist. As she was about to graduate from Barnard College in 1984, she had to be cajoled by a career guidance counselor to apply for an internship at NPR in Washington. Good for that counselor. The rest, as they say, is history. A 40-year career with distinguished work at NPR, WNYC, CNN, CBS Sunday Morning, MSNBC, and other news organizations. Starting her own nonprofit media production company, which syndicates and has for many years her Latino USA program. She wrote 2 acclaimed books, memoirs of a fascinating life. She has taught journalism at DePaul University and at Barnard. 4 Emmys, a Peabody, a Pulitzer. But Maria seems most proud of being simply an inquisitive, fact-based, storytelling journalist. As a Latina immigrant, she says, I was invisible once myself. I wanted to tell stories about other invisible people, the urban poor, women, immigrants, troubled teenagers in gangs. In a magazine interview a decade ago, she listed these 4 imperatives for a responsible journalist. 1, tell people's untold stories. 2, hold the powerful accountable. 3, be the eyes and ears watchdog for the people. 4, shine a light on previously unseen things. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this year's winner of the W.M. Kiplinger Award for Distinguished Contributions to Journalism, Maria Hinojosa.
Thank you, Knight. Knight was like, we're going to take the picture later. So I was just like, you're the boss. So can you see me? Because, you know, when people meet me, the first thing they're just so disappointed because I'm so small. And they're like, but you sound so big on the radio and you look so big on television. I'm like, yeah, and right now I'm wearing 5-inch heels. So, okay. It's really an honor to receive this award from NPF and specifically from the Kiplinger family and from Knight, who has become a fast friend. We talk a lot about farming and journalism. That's an inside kind of thing. And first of all, just thank you to the staffs of Futuro Media and Latino USA. Futuro Media turns 15 this year, which means that I created Futuro Media, an independent nonprofit media company run by a Mexican immigrant. Oh, that should be no problem in this moment in time, right? It's a joke. You can laugh. You can laugh. If we don't laugh, we're going to cry. But when I started Futuro Media in 2010, remember, it was a recession, a depression, and journalists had been laid off entirely. So it was such a dark time, and here we are. We've made it to 15 years. But thank you. Aw, that's so sweet. And Latino USA is now on its 32nd year, so that's pretty cool too. We're the longest running Latino news program of any medium in the United States, which is, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so that sounds great, right? But like in my little speech here, I'm like, how do I accept an award for distinguished contributions to journalism when mis queridos y queridas periodistas, journalists, my colleagues, there are a lot of times these days when I'm just like, my career meant absolutely nothing. Right? I mean, you know, we believe that when we as journalists shine light on an issue, it's supposed to get better. But the lights that I've been shining, I mean, I'm a national journalist. Like, I used to be on live television with Wolf talking politics, et cetera. So I've done it all. But if you think about shining a light, particularly, let's say, on immigrants, because I am a proud Mexican immigrant. I don't care what anybody says. Orgullosamente chilanga, coño. You know, we shine a light on, let's say, Latinos and Latinas, Latinx, Latina, yeah, I know we have a lot of terms for us. And also on immigrants, right? Shining a light. It's supposed to get better. It's gotten worse, right? So when I was the first Latina hired at NPR, at CNN, and at PBS, I was often looked at like an affirmative action hire. You remember those terms, affirmative action? I was not, but my work was questioned, right? I mean, I was told by an NPR editor, he was like, Maria, everybody knows about your agenda. He didn't talk like that. He was like, oh, Maria, everybody knows about your agenda. And I was like, what agenda? He was like, oh, you know, your Latino agenda. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was so upset. I did have a comeback. I was like, well, that means that you must have a white male agenda. I mean, why was the assumption, right? Like, it wasn't the only thing that I was reporting on, but I really went home and I was like, do I have an agenda? Because we don't want that as journalists, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I have an agenda. I want to make people feel something with my work. I want to make people feel something when they hear or see the work that I've done. And that has happened, right? It's led to many awards, et cetera. But feeling hated for being a journalist, feeling attacked for being a journalist, for being a Latina journalist, I mean, it wasn't supposed to turn out this way, right? And the thing is that when you look at the numbers, because any of us who are talking about like Mitra, et cetera, are talking about diversity, it's like, actually, we're just talking about the future of business in this country. So Latinos, specifically, Latinos and Latinas are the future of this country, whether you like it or not. That is what's happening demographically. But it's not even like, wah! It's like, it's just data, people. So it's a reality, right, that all of us need to be doing better in terms of covering Latinos and Latinas. By the way, I started a new series on Latino USA because I got so tired of hearing in the media, Latino men. Well, what happened with Latino men? Oh, Latino men. But there were no Latino men talking about the issue. So we have a new series on Latino USA called Hombre, Understanding Latino Men, where they are talking for themselves, right? But you know, the thing is that there's this perception about who immigrants are, right? Obviously, and many of us are trying to tell the truth about who we are because, you know, my dad, may he rest in peace, came from Tampico, Mexico, and had this incredible dream that he wanted to help create something that would help the deaf, if they chose to, be able to hear again. My father was a medical doctor dedicated to research, hired by the University of Chicago, and that Mexican immigrant helped to create the cochlear implant. But you're gonna tell us that we're the problem? I mean, the truth is, right, and we all need to know this, immigrants right now, we are the canaries in the mine for how far this country will go to deny people due process on the basis of simply not being born in this country, queridos y queridas. That's me. Do you understand? Like, yes, I'm an American citizen, but at any point, that citizenship can be taken away from me. That's my reality as a journalist today. Do I think about it? No, watch me on Instagram. I'm out boxing in the park, and I'm dancing on my Instagram to show that you will not take me down with all of your hatred and your anger and your attacks to me. But you know what? For us as journalists, so are there two sides to children being caged and covered with foil blankets? Are there two sides? I mean, are there two sides of cannibalism? Right? There was a spoof on SNL about PBS on the NewsHour. It was like, and tonight, the two sides of cannibalism. It's funny, but it's not, right? And the term, if any of you are still using the term illegal immigrant in your journalism, please, let's go to the AP style book because it is not used in the AP style book. And to refer, here's the thing. You know who taught me never to use the word illegal? I don't even think you know this story, Wolf. It happened at the CNN New York Bureau when I happened to end up with Elie Wiesel. And I was so obsessed with the Holocaust, yeah, this Mexican kid on the south side of Chicago, obsessed with the Holocaust, that I went up to him and I said, Mr. Wiesel, here at CNN, they want me to use the term illegal immigrant. I don't think it's correct. It's certainly not grammatically correct. And he said, there is no such thing as an illegal human being. The first thing the Nazis did was to declare the Jews to be an illegal people. So that term carries the weight. It is the reason why people will say, oh, they're just a bunch of illegals. Who cares? No, illegal is not a noun because we know grammar in this room, right? All right, I'm gonna cut this short because it really is upsetting and I gotta go to sleep soon and, you know, wake up and get back to New York, etc. You know, an 11-year-old girl named Jocelyn took her own life in the past week. It's being reported, although I just found out that not a lot of national news media is covering the story. She took her own life in Texas because kids were bullying her that they were gonna come and call ICE on her family. And so when I say we're not all gonna make it, we are not all gonna make it. And that's the hard part. But when these thoughts come, right, I look to my godfather of American journalism, and it is not Wolf Blitzer. I'm really poking fun at Wolf, because it's fun. My North Star of American journalism, my godfather, is Frederick Douglass. And I know that he's the man. And if you have never been to his statue on 110th and Central Park, please go. So if he was able to love this country, if he was able to thrive, if he was able to not be taken down, then so can I. And in those moments, when I'm out there boxing at 7 o'clock in the morning in my park in Harlem, although not revealing too much about where I am because, you know, security, the question is that for me, like for Frederick, like for all journalists of conscience in our country, this is not a job. I love the awards, yes, but this is not a job. This is a mission. It's a mission that I'll die carrying that mission with me because, you know, as journalists, this notion of we're going to retire, ¿qué es eso? Retire? As a journalist? Hell no. Thank you, Wolf, also. That was a joke. You can laugh. So with that, dear colleagues, I just want to say thank you so much to the National Press Foundation and to the Kiplinger family and my new friend, Knight, for this recognition. It really will help me in those moments when I think my career meant nothing, because seeing all of you being here means everything to me, and I'll hold that. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Presenting the Benjamin C. Bradley Editor of the Year Award, Kendall Harkness, Head of Culture and Community at the Minnesota Star Tribune.
All right, all right. Hello. We are at the last one. So I will make this quick and sweet. That is my gift to you all. But I have a few things to say about my boss, my friend, Suki Dardarian. Suki is our vulnerable fighter. And what I mean by that, vulnerable first, means that she is an empathetic leader. As our managing editor during the Floyd uprising, she came to the Black journalists and asked, what do you guys need? We didn't have to go to her. Her heart told her to come to us. And that meant everything. She is a fighter for truth and justice. And now, I believe that she was probably watching her dad, Leo, fight in the civil rights movement as an Armenian immigrant. And that must have sparked in her this feeling of, we got to do battle with injustice. And moved her through a pretty wonderful career. The other thing, I had the pleasure of witnessing during Floyd. I went to see Suki, and it was, of course, during the pandemic, and she's on her balcony, and I was like, hey, Suki, how are you? And she's like, wait a minute. I got a beef with the governor. He's not letting our people do what they need to do. She's like, I'll be right back. So our Governor Tim Walz had several earfuls from Suki about making sure that her people were safe when they were out in the field, and they were able to actually cover their stories in a way that meant that our people got the information that they needed. She also she played a really big role in making sure that we all got to witness the Chauvin trial live and on TV. If you didn't know that, Minnesota doesn't like cameras in the courtroom, like at all. And with that News Alliance, she was able to move forward so that the world could witness what happened in that courtroom. Now, with Floyd and COVID, I feel like she learned so much. Like the part of her was revealed. She was definitely a fighter, and definitely vulnerable in a way that allowed her people to trust and move forward. And that was important for this past year. The Minnesota Star-Tribune embarked on the largest amount of change in the shortest amount of time that we've ever done in the 157 years we've been in existence. We moved mountains in a way that we've never done. We've put ourselves in places and done things that stretch us beyond what we thought was possible. And so because of our vulnerable fighter, she has left us in a place to actually own our own future. We are set up for success as she walks out the door. So I'm internally grateful. We at the Star-Tribune are internally grateful for our fearless leader, Suki Dardarian. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kendall. Just losing my place here. I know I'm the last thing between this place and the after party, so. This honor means the world to me. First, it comes days after closing out more than 40 years in journalism, most of them as an editor. Second, it comes from an institution that for decades has dedicated itself to supporting and training journalists, being acknowledged by an organization whose values so align with mine touches my heart. Third, the Benjamin C. Bradley Award is particularly meaningful because I was one of those journalists in the 70s who was energized watching Bradley's newspaper change the course of American history. And when I think of Ben Bradley, I think of one scene in All the President's Men, the movie. Woodward and Bernstein have confirmed the Watergate cover-up led right into the White House. They're on the lawn at Ben Bradley's house at 2 in the morning. Bradley, in the form of Jason Robards, is clad in his robe and slippers, and they tell him what they've learned. He listens, and then he speaks. You know the results of the latest Gallup poll? Half the country never even heard of the word Watergate. Nobody gives a shit. Then he says, you guys are probably tired. You're probably pretty tired, right? Well, you should be. Go on home. Get a nice hot bath. Rest up. 15 minutes. Then get your asses back in gear. We're under a lot of pressure, you know. And you put us there. Nothing is riding on this, except the First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of the press, and maybe the future of the country. Hard ass, tough love, on his lawn, in his jammies, with his people. That so captured the spirit I aspired to. So when I was humbled to learn of this award, I had to go look up that quote. And that's when I discovered the horrifying truth. Ben Bradley never said any of that. Oh, damn. Yeah, apparently, so Woodward later explained, they did break the news to him in the middle of the night. Yes, in the front yard. Yes, Bradley was in his jammies. But Bradley's real response was this: what the hell do we do now? And that's probably a lot closer to my refrains as an editor over the years. Much more realistic. But still, what a romantic narrative, right? Two scrappy local news reporters with a big story
a hard-driving editor, and an owner, Catherine Graham, who had their backs. Some say it's a fleeting narrative in today's disrupted media landscape. But I can say I actually spent most of my career amid that narrative, right down to working for Catherine Graham in my first full-time job at one of the few newspapers the Grahams once owned, the Everett Herald. Then came the Tacoma News Tribune and the Seattle Times and the Minnesota Star Tribune. Throughout my career, I had the fortune and the intent to work for independent, family-owned news organizations that were also committed first and foremost to public service journalism. And I'm proud that in the last years that I've been at the Star Tribune, our owner, our entire company has recommitted to that pledge. I'm no Bradley. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to war. I've been married only once. But I do feel a kinship with him and so many others who love journalism as much as I do and who love newsrooms as much as I do. The journalists I've worked with never deposed a president, but they made life better for children, for rape survivors, for the elderly, for accident victims, for people with disabilities. And beyond the daily news, we covered fatal avalanches and volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, riots, protests, and of course the pandemic. Two stories in particular sit like bookends in my recent career. In Washington State, a parolee shot and killed 4 police officers in a coffee shop. Our staff covered a community wrapped with fear and grief during a massive manhunt. And later, when our journalists sought to learn why the killer was out of prison, we actually had to sue, leading a media team to do that, to make the records public. The other story came a little over a decade later in Minnesota, when 4 police officers killed a man named George Floyd in the middle of the street. The community erupted in rage, and as our city burned, our journalists spread out to chronicle the story for their neighbors. They were assaulted by police and protesters, and as they sought to investigate, we too had to fight for those records as well. And in a state, as Kendall said, that still refused to allow cameras in the courtroom, we pushed and led the effort to open that murder trial not just to cameras, but to the world. The news is relentless, but so are we. It was that commitment to reporting the truth for our community that held us together as we sought to cover the big stories of the day at all those newspapers, and into big stories of the day and into the night, many of us in our jammies, particularly during the pandemic. And somehow along the way, my colleagues also sought to support the business of news, to transform the way we work, the tools they use, to embrace new ways of telling stories and better understanding our readers, doing the hard work of reinvention amid disruption. I'm lucky to have been surrounded by brilliant, creative, passionate people, and some of them are here tonight at table 23. From my days at the Seattle Times, David Boardman, Kathy Best, and Eric Olken. From the Star Tribune, Kendall Harkness and Eric Wiefering. And our 2 DC reporters, we have 2 DC reporters, local newspaper, Sydney Kashigawa and Chris Vonderchek. And last, yeah. Sydney is an NPF fellow, by the way. And last but not at all least, my husband, Peter Callahan, and our daughters, Anna and Blair Callahan. They have been my toughest editors and my strongest advocates. Thank you. You don't need a Gallup poll to know that there's much to feel hopeless about in journalism today. I'm not going there right now. Because after a lifetime in local news, thousands of miles from here, I remain an optimist. inspired by those who continue to fight to save journalism, and I'll mention the fellows that I met today, inspiring, and the journalists who continue to produce the kind of powerful and innovative work we're celebrating here tonight. In my view, we really can't choose not to be hopeful, even in these times, because, as we all know, there's nothing much riding on this, right? Except for the First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of the press, and maybe the future of the country. Thank you. They want the happy hour.
Yeah, they do.
And now, concluding our program, NPF President Ann Godlasky.
This concludes tonight's program. Thank you all. As you know, it is a difficult time for journalists, but tonight is about celebrating the best of journalism. We hope you will continue celebrating with us at the Google News Initiative after party, and we hope we'll see you again next year. Thank you all for your support.